Well, good morning, prospective beekeepers out there, I hope. I'm Susan Welchance. This is my husband and assistant, Donnie. We have a apiary that we named it River's Edge Bee Yard. We live in Leanna on the west bank of the Stones River, west fork of the Stones River. And we currently have 27 beehives in that area. This is our 8th year to keep bees, and this is a hobby that we just really enjoy. So y'all may say, well, why on earth did you two people decide to keep bees? Well, there's products of the hive that are very excellent. They're honey. Everybody likes honey. And here's a pint of ours that we also brought for door prize. This came from our hives. We harvested that last week. And right now, as an aside here, right now is when the beekeepers are robbing the honeybees and getting the honey off that was made this spring. And in Tennessee, the bees, in Middle Tennessee, the bees do the bulk of their honey making at the end of April through May, and if we're lucky, the first couple of weeks of June. And then that's when they make their big crop of honey for the year. And if we're really lucky, there may be a fall flow, or maybe not, you know, it just depends. But we count on the spring flow to get our big honey crop. So another product we get out of the beehive is wax, and there over to my right, that's a few of my wax products that I have produced. They make nice candles, little ornaments, little Christmas ornaments, and so that's another good thing. And I like to use wax, beeswax in like skin cream and lip balm. It makes really nice skin creams and lip balms. And later in the fall, I'll be doing another class where I will talk about my wax processing and then how I use the beeswax in these candle making lip balms and creams. Then another product that most people don't know about, I'm sure, is something called propolis. And this is a sticky substance. Basically, it's bee glue. And the bees go out and they harvest in the springtime resin from trees, and they harvest it, they put it through their little digestive system, and then they use it to stop up any little crack or hole in the hive that they don't like, or any little space that they don't like, and they stop it all up with this propolis. And propolis has great antibacterial properties. And humans don't really like it. I like it now that I know what it does. But at first, humans thought, man, this is an icky, sticky mess, and it just makes it hard on me to get the frames apart. So let's breed out of bees their propolis making talent. So that was done. Well, that made the bees weak, because then they weren't producing this antibacterial substance that helped them keep the hive clean and sanitary. You know, not only they could no longer manufacture this good sticky resinous stuff that would stop up any holes that was letting air in that they didn't like, but it also had these antibacterial properties that now were gone. So sometimes humans we get a little too smart for our britches, and because Mother Nature gave the bees this ability to produce this great byproduct of propolis. And then the last thing I'll say about the great things about bees, as if, you know, the honey, wax, and propolis wasn't enough, honey bees pollinate about 1/3 of our food sources. And without pollinators, we would be limited to just the wind-pollinated foods such as grains. We would be without a lot of our fruits and our nuts. And in California, where they grow most of the country's almond crop, they bring in bees from all over the United States every spring to pollinate. And without bees, they would have far less almonds to sell us. So that's why we are so interested in helping the bees out and keeping them healthy and maintaining a good bee population. Because let me tell you, these are dicey little critters to keep going. They can die on you in a heartbeat. But it's a very rewarding hobby. And so now I'm going to tell you, you might say, well, when's the best time to start beekeeping? Well, we're halfway through the year now. So the best time to start is in the spring, really. Which in here, that means April and May. But getting started in the spring means that you're going to have to order your bees in the late fall or early winter of the prior year. So if you're wanting to start beekeeping next year, what you really should do is join your local bee club. And for those of us in Murfreesboro, we have the Rutherford County Beekeepers Association. And we meet every Monday night at 7 o'clock at the Ag Center, the administrative offices over here on John Rice Boulevard. And so we meet every month, and the president, Keith Elrod, who is just an outstanding beekeeper, he keeps us on track throughout the year of what our bees are doing and what we should be doing to help the bees. So if you're interested, start coming to our meetings and just kind of hang out with us once a month. And then that will give you an idea of where to get your bees. Because most beginners start with what we call a package of bees. And that's 2 to 3 pounds of bees and a laying queen. And that costs around $100. And you have to know where to order these things from. And they come in the mail, believe it or not. It's really something. We got 2 packages when we got started. And we were all excited about getting them. And one morning about 6 a.m. the post office calls and says, we have your packages of bees, please come right now and get them. So we did. We jumped up, ran, got in the truck, and went and got them. So they come in the mail, or you could buy what we call a nuke, which is a little 5-frame hive of bees that's already got the colony started and the queen is laying. Or you could buy the whole hive. But for beginners, it's thought that really a package is best because that's kind of like you start out slow and you can build up with your bees. And also, in the late winter, in February and then March, a lot of the local bee clubs will have a short beginners bee club, beekeepers class. And if you go for 2 or 3 nights, you'll learn, the beginning stuff to get you on your way to beekeeping. So, what do bees need to live? Well, they're like us. They need food, shelter, and water. You're going to need your bees. That's a mated and laying queen. The worker bees, and they're the girls. Drones, they're the boys. And so you'll get maybe 3,000 or 4,000 bees in like a 2 or 3 pound package. Well, you're going to ultimately have 40 to 50,000 bees in a hive that's really going to make you some honey. You're also going to have equipment. There's a lot of equipment to beekeeping. So I'm going to show you a small nucleus hive because it's easier to cart around. This has 5 frames to it, Your standard hive, the standard square hive that you see, was invented by Lorenzo Langstrom back in the 1800s. And he's the American beekeeper that designed our beehive that we use today, and discovered the concept of bee space, where you don't want to have more than like 3/4 of an inch between the frames, or the bees will just make burko and make everything but honey, which is what you want. So you're going to need lots of equipment. This is a screened bottom board, and this is an innovation within like the last 20 years or so. Before this, people just used what they called a solid bottom board, just a solid piece of wood. But with the advent of the varroa mite back in the 90s, and that's a little pest that made its way over from Asia and just decimated American beehives. Prior to the 1990s, apparently it was much easier to keep bees. You just put your bees out and say we're happy and made honey and lived long lives, and everybody was happy. But with the advent of the varroa mite, all of a sudden the bees just died off in droves. So some smart beekeeper came up with the screened bottom board. This is hardware cloth, and the holes in it, they let the varroa mites fall through here, but they don't let the bees escape. So people, especially in the South, we use these screened bottom boards, and this is good for ventilation, because right now, man, it is hot out there in the bee yard. So this is good for ventilation, and it lets those pesky varroa mite fall through. So you have to have that. Then you have a box which we call a super, and this is a deep box. There's 3 different sizes of honey supers. This is called the deep, and usually this is where the brood is. The queen is here working hard, laying 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day, and when she's really going good. And we start them off on wax foundation, and the bees will draw this out just beautifully to where, excess, I get the wax to make that stuff over there. But this is like half of a standard size box. So this has 5 frames in it, and the queen is in here with her worker bees, and they're in here making babies. Then I'll show you like a honey super. Then up here you would put in another box, and then this is a medium. Our set, you got deep, medium, and shallow, and this is the medium size. So you would put this here, and then they would climb up and they'd make their honey up here. And then this is what we call an inner cover, and this provides ventilation too. See this little vent hole up here? That lets, the ventilation is very important, because you don't ever want a wet bee, and you need the vents so that the air can circulate and you don't get condensation in the hive. So this is the inner cover, and the bees will come up here and walk around up here. And then this is what we call the outer cover. So this is your basic design of a beehive. You've got your queen down here making brood. They're making the honey up here, which is what we like, and what the bees have to make an abundance of. Because the bees, the great thing about the European bee is that they want to make a lot of honey, because they're thinking about winter. And so they want to make enough honey to take them through the winter. And we know that if we keep them right and help them along, they'll make more than enough honey for them to make it through winter, and also for us to rob in the springtime. And that's another important concept. We don't want to over rob the bees in the summer. Like we're taking off honey right now to sell to folks and for our own use. But we're very careful not to just rob them down to where they have zero stores. We leave at least, they'll have a deep for their brood making, and then they'll have honey on the frames on the side. And we leave them at least a shallow full of honey or a medium full of honey, because we don't want to have to feed them sugar syrup, and honey is really far more nutritious for them than just plain old sugar syrup. And let me show you a little bit about feeding. To feed them, because when you start a beehive, it takes a lot of sugar, because you have to make 1-to-1 sugar syrup to get help the bees get started. And how I make that is I'll take a 4-pound bag of sugar, put it in a 1-gallon jug, and then run tap water up to fill it up. As hot tap water as you can get it from the tap. You don't want to boil it, because if you boil it, that will caramelize the sugar, and that makes the bees sick. But I'm a small-time beekeeper, and let me make that disclaimer. Donnie and I are hobbyist beekeepers. That's all we ever plan to be. We love working with the bees, and we like selling honey to our friends and neighbors, but we don't have any aspirations to send bees off to California to pollinate, or even to pollinate, down the road. We just like to have our bees in the backyard, and we mess with them there and harvest the honey. But if you're going to be a beekeeper, you have to make sure that your bees have food. That's part of it. Just like you wouldn't, if you were a farmer and farming cattle, you wouldn't let your cattle starve to death. So we're not going to let our bees starve to death. But to feed them, so we've got our sugar syrup. And the recipe I gave you was 1-to-1, and you feed that in the spring to stimulate them. In the fall, when they're getting ready for winter, then we feed them 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. It's a lot thicker, and that makes it easier for the bees to digest during the winter, because you don't want a highly liquefied syrup for them in the winter, because that'll make them sick and they can't get out and take cleansing flights. So you've got to feed them a much thicker syrup for the winter. But here's how Donnie and I like to feed. And Donnie makes a lot of our hive components. If you have some saws and are handy in your wood shop, you can make a lot of this stuff. He made this whole outfit. In our big standard size hives, we'll order just the box and we'll order the frames. But he makes our bottom boards and our inner covers and our outer covers and our little feeding stations. But if I wanted to feed this, I'd have this on my inner cover. I would have this full of my syrup, either 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, depending on the time of year. Set it up like that. And then I would protect it from the weather and from varmints and critters by putting an empty super on it and then topping it off with an outer cover. Now, and this helps cut down on robbing, because bees are curious little girls. They're always out looking to see what's out there, what pollen or syrup or whatever. And if they detect a lot of honey in a hive where the bees are kind of weak or there's not enough in there to protect their turf, then the bees will go in and rob, and we don't want that, because if you get robbing started, they can just decimate the hive. They'll kill the queen and rob out the honey and the pollen, and it's just a mess, so we don't want that. And we think that putting it up here like this will helps cut down on rotting. Now, another thing you have to consider if you're going to keep bees, you need to have a good site for your bee yard. And this is all about location, location, location on your apiary. There's several things to consider. Accessibility. You're going to have to visit the hive throughout the year in all kinds of weather. So you're going to avoid locations to where carrying equipment and heavy supers of honey any distance is going to be necessary. We live in what I call rural suburbia out there in Leanna. We live on Shacklet Road. Across the street there's a subdivision, but on each side of us we've got the Jordan farm, and on the other side the Bubba Horde farm, and then the Stones River goes down. That's our backyard. That comes up to our backyard. So, and we have, our little slice is 4 acres. So we have our beehives behind our house, and we've got a shed, and we put them behind the shed. And this is kind of up on a slope, and they get good air circulation up there, and they're pretty well concealed from the road, which we like because you don't want vandals deciding, oh, wouldn't it be fun to go tip over a few beehives? You know, we don't want that. So you need to have sort of a discreet place for your bees. You know, you want them secluded from traffic. They don't like constant loud noises. That disturbs them. And you just don't want people milling around in your bee yard that don't know what they're doing. You know, you want people to respect the bees and show a little common sense around them. Now, and so if you have a fence or a screen of bushes or trees, that's good too. Then you want to locate the hive so that the entrance has a southern or eastern exposure, and that's so that the bees will get up and start to work as soon as the sun comes up, because we want those girls out early collecting all that nectar. And it's best to have them in a location of full sun. Now, this is also a philosophy that came on in the last probably 10 years, and this is all about a pest called the small hive beetle. It's this little bitty black beetle, and if it detects that a hive is weak and that they can't police it, they will go in and they'll take over a hive and just lay their larvae, and you just have this big mess. But the small hive beetle doesn't like sunshine, a lot of sunshine. So we've always had our hives in full sun, which isn't too great on us, because now it's time to extract honey. We're out there in full sun, you know, in our veil. Now, let me talk a little bit about that, the clothing. At a minimum, you've got to have a hat and veil like that. You've got to have long sleeves. You've got to have long pants. And you need to have your pants cinched down at the ankles, either with some tape or a bungee cord, or better yet, have a pair of pants that have a little bungee cord sewn in there so you can cinch them up. Because the bees will crawl up your pants leg if you don't watch it. Yes, ma'am?
Can't you take your socks on the outside of your pants?
You can do that. Yeah, you can do that. Put your pants in your socks. But the important thing is, don't leave a gap in your ankles and your pants leg. And if you don't have a full sun location, you know, go for the morning sun and afternoon shade. But do not put it in full shade. I mean, that your hive just won't make it if you have it in full shade all day long. because that encourages the development of bee diseases like nosema and European foulbrood. And you don't want it like on the top of a hill where the wind is just gonna be whipping up and down all the time. Because that again, that disturbs them, and you know, if they get cold, they'll get cold in there. So you avoid windy exposed hilltops, and you need a dry ground and good air circulation. You don't want it near a creek or a river, and we live on the Stones River, but we've made sure that the location of our bees is up above the floodplain, because we don't aim to have to be scurrying away with a box of bees in front of rising floodwaters. And that's what you'll get into if you're not careful. So you don't want them close to a river or creek bank that's going to flood. Now you've also got to assure that you've got a good source of water for your bees. You know, all creatures have to have water to survive. And the bees not only consume it for just their own health, but they use it for raising the brood and for regulating hive temperature. So if you don't live near a pond or a river or a creek, you have to make sure you provide them with a good source of water, like a bird bath, a chicken waterer, or a small watering trough. You know, any of those will do. You have to make sure that there's floats and other little resting places for the bees to land so that they don't drown. And if you don't provide them with water, rest assured that if you have a neighbor with a saltwater pool, they are headed directly for that saltwater pool. So water is very important. And then food. Throughout the foraging season, which, you know, it'll start in February. We start having trees start blooming, maples, elms, poplars, things we don't even think about. The trees are in bloom, but when you see those little catkins kind of blowing around, those are blooms that the trees have put out. And so the bees are hitting those to get pollen in the early season. And then later on, when our clover, we have a lot of white Dutch clover around us, and that's the biggest part of our honey. You know, you get that going. But you've got to have nectar and pollen sources within roughly at least 1 mile of your hive. And they've got to have pollen for brood rearing. And nectar is the bee's basic source of energy and the honey. And a large honey crop requires large concentrations of floral sources and then a very populous colony of bees. And you need to be safe from pesticides. So if at all possible, locate your colonies away from fields that are routinely treated with pesticides, like a big soybean field. You know, they spray soybeans a lot, and they spray cotton a lot. And in big cornfields, they use treated corn seed that's treated with pesticides to knock out the corn borer so that they have better crop production. But those seeds treated with pesticide, you know, when the bees land on them to collect pollen, you know, they're getting that pesticide treated pollen. And pesticides are really they're a bane of the American beekeeper right now. And so my word of advice would be, you know, try not to have your colonies close to a field like that. But farmers, you know, have to do what they have to do to bring in a good crop too. So you need to maintain a good relationship if you've got farmer neighbors that grow that kind of crop, so that they will let you know when they're going to spray, and then you can take action to keep your bees in during the day or so when they're spraying. And if you're going to use pesticides, follow the label directions. If it calls for 1 cup of pesticide to 3 gallons of water. Don't add 2 cups thinking, well, this will make it kill these better. You know, to follow your label directions when using any kind of poisons. Now, so you've decided you're gonna keep these next spring. So what should you do? Okay, you're gonna have to assemble all of your hive components and your honey frames, and you're gonna have to select your bee yard and apiary location. You're gonna have to put your hive in place. So, and you can't wait to do all this on the day your package of bees arrive. You need to have your apiary site selected. If it needs any mowing or maintaining, you need to do that. You don't need to have an apiary unfenced where cattle or horses are, because they will just go up and rub on the corner and then knock the hive over. So if you're gonna have a bee yard around cattle or horses, make sure you have it fenced very well so that the cattle and the horses don't come and knock your hives over, because that will be the next thing that will happen. And yes, sir.
You mentioned mowing. When you're gonna mow, I imagine that excites your bees quite a bit, so.
It does. We mow around ours. We do it very carefully. And I put a veil on,
Okay.
and I put my gloves on, and then I try to do it as quickly as I can and take care not to bump them. But they don't like the big noise. No, they do not. But you don't want the weeds and grass growing up and covering up the hive either, and that'll happen.
Use the sign.
No, I use a push mower, and I've got a walk behind weed eater, because I never have mastered that bump, mow, movement of the weed eater. But I've got my little push thing now, and I do it, but they don't like it.
But make no attempts to bind them in any way, you just go ahead and leave them.
Oh, yeah,
Go in
no,
there.
I just do it quickly.
Do you put chips or anything out around your hive so you don't have to mow close to them or anything?
Well, what we use is we'll put down roofing shingle.
Okay.
And if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you see a broken open bale of roofing shingle,
Right.
they'll discount that 50% for you. So that's how we'll round up our roofing shingles to put down.
Or find a roofer, they'll deliver a truckload of used shingles for you.
Do what?
Yeah.
Find a roofer,
Used.
they'll deliver a whole truckload.
A roof, yeah, the ones that took off.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't care what they look like, I mean,
Yeah.
I just want the grass not to grow. So, thank you.
Yeah. But with our Bermuda grass, that'll just grow right over there if you don't, just right over your roofing shingles. And then I've seen beekeepers, they make these beautiful little pads with pavers, stone pavers. I mean, you can really get fancy, you know, put down pavers under your beehives. But, you know, we've got 28, we're not gonna be constantly designing nice little paving landscape to put ours over. And then something else that's can be recommended to keep down the varroa mite or the beetles, because their larvae, the beetle larvae will drop down, and if they crawl across something like diatomaceous earth or agricultural lime, that'll cut their little soft bodies and kill them. So scattering diatomaceous earth or ag lime under your hives and around it is good too. But the rain will wash that away, so you know, it's always no long-term thing can be done that just put down this ag lime once and it will forever, you know, solve that problem. You have to do it, you know, after rains, between rains. Now, you want a hive stand. And what we use are 8-inch concrete blocks. And you can get those at Lowe's and Home Depot, hardware stores. And they're not all that expensive. They cost, what, a couple of bucks? They're not much. Now, if you go to the bee catalogs, they have hive stands that they look very nice. Those things are like $60 just for one stand. So, you know, beekeepers are frugal. That's a nice way of saying cheap. So anytime we can save a dime, we want to do it, and so we go for the 8-inch concrete blocks to put ours up, because you don't want them sitting on the ground, because that will absorb dampness and the cold. So, but if you put them up on these blocks, then the air will circulate under there. Yeah, and it's a deterrent to critters, to skunks. Skunks like to go up and start scratching out here, and then the guard bees will come out. Now, the bees have different jobs throughout the different stages of their life. And when they're young, they're nurse bees, and they do the caretaking of the babies. And then the next job will be what we call a soldier bee, or a guard bee. And their job is to keep any predator away from the hive. So when the skunk comes up and starts scratching away, the guard bee or soldier bee will fly out, and then the skunk will grab it and eat it. And being tortured by these critters at nighttime like this, that upsets the bees too, so you don't want that. So one thing people do is they will put carpet tacks, get a little piece of rug, I think, and put carpet tacks and put it up here, and that will deter the skunks. But we've never, even though we live on the river, and we do see skunks occasionally, you know, at dusk, we've never been tortured by, our bees have never been tortured by skunks. Yes, ma'am.
What about raccoons?
Them too, they are pests, they'll come up there and do the same thing, I'm sure. But, yeah,
Are mothballs bad for the bees?
yes they are,
That's what
yes
I
they
thought
are.
probably were. Okay.
Yeah,
I know that they'll use that to keep other predators, other little critters
Yeah.
away sometimes.
but mothballs, the wax will absorb mothballs, so you don't want that. You don't want the wax absorbed. Now, beekeepers will use a product called paramoth, but that is not the same thing as just commercial mothballs. You never want commercial mothballs in or near your hive, because the wax will absorb it, and that's just, you just don't want that. That'd be real bad, and it will ruin your wax. The paramoth that beekeepers use, that dissipates over the winter, but we don't use paramoth. How we preserve our wax, after we extract, and then we've got the super clean. After you extract, then you put what we call wet super on top of the inner cover, and you let the bees clean that up. And the wax will be just dry, just as pretty as you can want it. Then we take that super wax, and we've got a chest freezer that we stick it down in for 48 hours. And that will freeze any larvae or little critters in there that you don't want. Then we take it out and we wrap it in a construction grade garbage bag. Not just your regular garbage bag, but construction grade. And we roll it up and we tape it down good with duct tape. And then we write on there what's in there, so that we will know what we're pulling out next spring. And that has all, for 8 years, that has assured that our wax is just beautiful when we pull it out the next spring. Now you gotta make sure you got it taped down good, or wax moths will get in there and make a mess. But that's what we do, and that's always worked for us. And that's what Robert Burns, who was one of our master beekeepers, Robert is from Rockville, and he told us that was how to preserve our wax. That's what he does. So we followed his advice, and that's always worked beautifully. Okay, so you've got your hive made, you've got your frames made, you've got your wax installed in the frames, you've got it set up on blocks. Okay, don't put your wax in until your bees get here. But get your components, your box, your lids, your outer cover, your inner cover, your supers, your bottom board, get your blocks, get all that set, look and see where the sun comes up and goes down so that it's facing east, southeast. And don't aim it toward your neighbor's front door or your neighbor's back door, you know, because the bees, they're gonna come out and they're gonna go straight. So if it just so happens that you've gotta aim it toward a neighbor, you need to put a barrier in front of the hive so that your fence or your tree barrier or your shrubs will make it go up.
What about if you don't like your neighbor?
Well, you know, you may come to a bad end. You and your bees may come to a bad end there. Let's see. But when you get them, okay, you get them, install them as soon as you get them. Now, if the weather's just really bad, you're gonna have to wait a while. But don't leave the bees out in the rain. You know, have them in a garage or a shed. Don't have them someplace. Don't have a pesticide strip close to wherever you put them down, because that'll kill them. But if you can, hopefully you'll have a nice sunny day, or a day that's not too bad anyway, and you can install them. And then you need to feed them. Then you're on your way. So let's see. Questions? Yes, sir.
Winterizing them, how do you go about that?
Well, we don't wrap. We're too far south. We don't need to wrap them in tar paper. But what we do, what Donnie and I will do, is we'll cut out a piece of foam insulation and we put it to fit over the inner cover, and that leaves, see, there's a little lip here. That leaves a space for the bees to walk around under the foam, and it still lets some insulation in. But we put a piece of foam insulation that fits right on top of this and under the outer cover. And we'll leave that on all year.
But also, when winterizing for the winter, she'll cut the size of her, get it down, or the hive down.
Yeah.
She'll have, most likely, a brood box, if not two brood boxes, and a shallow or medium on top of two, or sometimes we'll only have one brood box and a shallow or medium on it for the winter. You don't want to take care of a hotel when you don't have a lot of people inside. So the bees, which they cluster in the wintertime. Now I make a ball, they make a ball, but you have those frames in the middle, but they still generate heat among themselves. And they'll be on where the babies are, the brood. They will not leave that brood. As long as they're living, as long as they brood in there, they will not leave it. And they actually go from the center to the outside and bringing honey into the bees. That's really, but it's bad, and the brood gets the ball gets too small and they eat their honey, or we robbed it too much. We want to make another buck. We robbed it too low. We starved them to death. We did, not they. And you see a lot of times people want us to sell them honey, as far as we're concerned, we're out of honey. That's the bees. We gotta be good partners to them. And they, most likely, you can see what she's done over here in this far picture. She's got 7 supers or 8 supers. I don't know how many she's got. You can see how high she is and how high. She's had to buy her a step stool 2 foot high to get up on, look at it. So, she battles them, day in, day out. That's her enjoyment. We worked 30, together we worked better than 60 years before we, retired. And she's got country blood and I got country blood. Love neighbors as long as they're nice. But I do not see how people live in the city, I'll be honest with you. No offense meant to any of you sitting here. I just love the space. I got used to it, and she's boss while I'm asleep. Most of the time when I'm awake, she's boss. But we enjoy life, we partners, and we tend to these, because we want something to do to stay out of each other's hair. She knows more about bees than I do. I tend to make the wood or be the laborer and the gopher.
He's my engineer.
But
He does the woodworking stuff.
I play with it, and
So I have a question. I see that it's very tall, and I'm thinking about a neighbor of ours that has bees. And he has many, but they're not high at all.
Is it a top bar hive?
I'm sorry.
Are they rectangular like this?
As opposed to,
Well, a top bar looks like a coffin.
no.
It would be like maybe the length of this table and up on legs.
No.
Okay.
No, he's got, but it's not tall like that.
Well,
I'm just wondering why you would do that as opposed, whereas he has maybe many more.
multiple hives.
Yes.
Well, this is a really strong hive. So I would look in it, and there'd be bees all over the top one, and there'd be bloom, and I could tell they were putting honey in there. So that's when you add another honey super. Now, now this one doesn't have as much. It swarmed on us. So we lost a bunch of those bees. So
So the bees, the amount of bees determine how high up.
yeah, and how productive the bees are.
Okay.
It's hard to say. I mean, did he just get started this year, or?
Oh, no, he's been there a long time. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about when you asked about the winter, was it last winter when we had those several days of very
Yeah.
cold weather? He actually took straw and almost made like a berm, like
Yeah.
around, just on one side, I guess, where maybe the wind and
The
the wind or
wind,
whatever.
yeah.
It was really interesting to watch, and as soon as the weather broke, then all of that was gone. It was very
Yeah.
interesting to see.
Yeah.
I
Where
just
we have ours located, we've got our shed that's a windbreak, and then we're kind of on a hill, so you've got the hill behind that's the windbreak. So we have no need to
Right.
bring in strawberries. But I don't know. This is what that particular hive needed to accommodate its honey making. So I don't know. I don't know about his.
you watch them when they're producing honey, you watch them once or twice every 2 weeks and look and see how much honey they're putting out for capping and going out. You don't ever let them completely fill a super up completely, because you get too many bees in there, they're gonna say it's time we divide and go make another home.
But the bees have this great hoarding instinct, which the African bees don't have. The African bees, see where they live, they tend to swarm multiple times. And so they'll swarm if they just decide, well, too many mites or too whatever reason they don't like it. They'll swarm and move somewhere else. Well, they always have a floral source in Africa or South America. Here, and in Europe, the bees do not have year-round floral sources. So the European bees And that's what we have. They're basically European. They're German and Italian and Russian. And those bees know that they're not gonna have access to floral sources all year round. So I mean, in the summer, they are going to hoard a lot more honey than the African bees are gonna hoard. But it's this hoarding instinct that us beekeepers like. So whenever they almost get a honey super filled, then we put another one on as long as we think the nectar flow is on. And the bees are still interested in filling it. Yes, sir.
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, how often on an average do you get stung? And then second of all, I would like to know if the bees should leave your hive. You said something or other about they would leave. Where do they go to? Somebody else's hive, or do they get out into nature and do what?
Well, do I get stung? Occasionally, I get stung. It feels like a red hot needle being stuck into me.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, that hurts. But you just keep on working, and in a couple of minutes, you know, I'm over it.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt. Now, the big thing is, you hope that you get it brushed away and you get the stinger pulled out real quick, because that stinger, that bee that stung you, has released an alarm pheromone that may attract other bees to that spot. So, you don't want that. But usually you just brush it off. Now, I am not allergic to bees, and Donnie's not allergic to bees, and if you are allergic to bees, do not take up beekeeping.
Well,
That is my advice to you.
yeah, I've been stung. I'm not a beekeeper, but I have been stung,
Yeah.
and all it did was hurt me. You know, I mean, I didn't get sick over it.
But people who are allergic, their airways close up.
Yeah.
They can die of anaphylactic shock, so you don't want that. So if you're allergic to bees, don't do this. Just buy our honey and plant flowers for the bees. That's what you can do for the bees. And the second part of your question.
If
Of
they
the
should
swarm.
leave your hive and go somewhere, what do they do there?
If they come out and you see them, a beekeeper is gonna get them. If they come out in our yard and they land within 15 or 20 feet, we are after them. Any good beekeeper is gonna catch a swarm now, because there goes your honey crop. And there goes $100 worth of packaged bees, or if you're buying a new, that's $150 up there. But don't be crazy about it if you're a beekeeper. We've had them go up like 50 feet high in a tree. Well, in that case, we just said so long, y'all just go. But they just go.
Will they live over the winter time in a tree, like in a tree or
If
something?
they find a tree, yeah,
Hollow.
they can live in a hollow tree.
Yeah.
Or a house, little house.
Yeah, they'll live in your house.
Yeah.
If they can get a
Yes,
place.
ma'am.
You're going out there, how do you catch them?
I did a class. We did a class earlier this year, and one of the best little gizmos we have developed in the last couple of years, and we got this from a beekeeper up in Cookville. And we took a fishing net.
Really?
Yes, we did. And we made a pillowcase wouldn't fit it. But what would fit it, we got some black landscaping cloth, and we put it together with duct tape. You need duct tape if you're gonna be a beekeeper. Duct tape will get you out of a lot of scrapes. So we taped it together with duct tape, and then Donnie got fishing line and sewed around the rim of the net, the big circle. We got that down, the black down in the inside the net. So that was what, 3 feet long. Then we got is it a mop handle or what?
Well,
Or
we
PVC.
added that on to that.
Yes.
It was a dip net, a big dip
Yeah,
net that
big
you
net.
pull big fish out of the water with from the boat.
Yeah, and then we put that onto A mop handle?
They made an extension.
Yeah, so I mean, that gave us, probably 10 feet of, poking power. So, when we have a swarm get out and it lands just right, if it's up, Donnie would get up on a ladder, and then I'd be down below with the box open or a hive.
Sugar water.
Yeah, and we'd spray the swarm with sugar water. If you're catching a swarm, spray it with sugar water, because this will make them too heavy to fly, plus it kinda gives them, I think it soothes them. Gives them something to eat on.
Gives
plus
them a sugar high.
Yeah, gives them a sugar high there. So we spray them with sugar water so they're not just flying all over the place. That'll slow them down. And then Donnie will get up under the swarm and then go pow, pow, pow to the branch 2 or 3 times. And a big wad will drop down into the net, into the bottom of that net. And then he'd hand it down to me. And of course, we're all garbed up. Now, don't think we're doing this in shorts and flip-flops. So, he hands it down to me, then I put them into the box or a nuke or whatever it is we're using, and then I hand it back to him. So we did this on one, and the first time I could kind of tell that, we didn't have a queen yet. But on the second or third trip like this, all of a sudden, these bees, and we always put like a big white vinyl cloth out front so we can see the bees. We don't want them just in the grass where we can't see them. All of a sudden, these bees start running up and running in here. So I said, we got the queen. That meant we got the queen in that last dumping of bees. And we did, because after that, the bees were a lot better about, they couldn't wait to get up here. So we did that a couple more times, and then we left a while to kind of let them settle down, and then he did it again, we throw them in again, and that will work.
We left that, it might have been the box we used, I'm not sure. We left it sitting out with the top on it, with the bottom, with the open space. And there was still some in the tree, which was approximately 15 to 20 foot off the ground. The next morning, they were all gone out of the tree. They were all in here.
Yeah.
You get that queen, and you get what we call drawn comb. Drawn comb is prior comb that you used if you don't have bees or you had left over. Drawn comb is great. Actually, on a hive, we went to Last Cassius and caught. It was one of the biggest hives on the ground, which I've got a picture right here of it. I took drawn comb, put it down on the ground, right over, easily
Pass that
dropped.
back. That's it.
Put
They're
that
on the ground.
frame of drawn comb on those bees, and the bees just got on it. I did that 2 or 3 times and put it in the box, and we just sat there for about an hour. The rest of those bees, even after dark, kept on going into the nuke. And we still have that hive. We call it the Hayes hive. And we took splits off it. They are real good bees. They do not start for some reason, they do not start their raising of bees. They're one of the last ones in the spring to start reproducing. But they'll stay on there, and they produce heavy. They are heavy producers. Now, they look just like all the other bees. All our bees now have crossbred and everything, so my wife calls them mutts. But we have produced a bee that overall we're fighting that mite by itself without using chemicals. We do not use chemicals in our hive. No chemicals. If it's in there to kill an insect, your bee's an insect. If you put poison in your hive to kill that insect, you affected the bee. It gets into the system. And to me, if you put chemicals inside your hive to do damage to insects, it's going to get into your comb and into your honey. we aim for pleasure, like she said. We break even on producing honey. In jars, we went the other day, bought, I don't know how many jars, but we have been
15
buying
dozen.
jars. We've been buying jars to produce for a year. The last time we went before, we bought enough to go 3 years. And they have jumped, the glass has jumped quite a bit in a 3-year span. We didn't realize it, so we've had to go up on honey to even break even.
But let me, talk about just a little bit more, cause I know we're out of time. If you're gonna keep bees, you gotta have a smoker, cause this calms them down, you gotta have some smoke. We use pine straw, then you top it off, once you get it burning good, you top it off with some grass or some kind of greenery so that you don't fry your bees. You're gonna have you some good gloves, some leather gloves, and a hive tool. You gotta have a hive tool. And I like this design because this hook helps you lift up the frames out of the super. And these are beetle traps. We put a beetle trap like here, and here in a super. And the bees, we fill this with like canola oil and apple cider vinegar, and then the bees will chase the beetles into little slots and then drowns them. So we like dead beetles. But anyway, that's it, and I think we've got a door prize.
Yes.
We've got 2 door prizes.
I'd like to thank Susan.